by. In 3, 2, 1.
Reality. Are you living it?
You are a function of this total galaxy, bounded by the Milky Way, and that furthermore, this galaxy is a function of all other galaxies.
Our reality.
The show that will stretch your consciousness and awaken you to a world of unlimited possibilities. It's time to change the world. It's time for an awakening. It's time for Our Reality. Hosted by your emissary to planet Earth, Violeta Brankovic.
Hey, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to Our Reality, where today we have a truly special show. I love it when guests like this come forward. We are going to be talking to a very impressive young lady. I want to commend her on her strength, on her courage to come out and talk about this. She's a light worker. She's an amazing woman, you will see. So I will introduce you to her a little bit. This is her story in her own words. Her name is Miss Morgan Ray, and she says, I was born in Seaside, Oregon on June 1st, 1985. Grew up in Portland with 3 sisters until leaving the military at 18 in 2003. I left the Army in 2007 after having surgery on both feet for bone deformities, which prevented me from passing a physical fitness test for deployment. In the Army, I studied networking systems with the 2ID 4th Stryker Brigade out of Fort Lewis, Washington, with courses in Cisco networking and top secret clearance level access to computer operating systems. We were setting up communications between the vehicles in the field of our commander software programs. In 2015, I graduated from Bellis Academy in Poway, California. And in 2018, I became a YouTube spiritual guidance personality. I was creating a channel to empower survivors of trauma to stand up for themselves through spirituality and connection to a higher power. I began reading tarot in 2019 and consistently help people through my connection to spirit. I have been an extraterrestrial contactee since I was 3 years old. I have many out-of-body experiences of visiting different planets and systems outside of Earth. Trident markings have shown up on my face out of nowhere after these encounters. I've experienced the teleportation of my physical body. I have energy healing abilities and permission to give Shaktipat energy transmissions. Now, MK Ultra program. I entered the MK Ultra program as a toddler. I believe my family was blackmailed into giving me up to the program and later paid off to keep quiet. I was taken a few times a year to government facilities where I was traumatized and experimented on to produce a disassociated personality. 2 separate, independent public personas. Morgan is the original personality, and Mia was the created sex spy who lived separately from Morgan's life. Mia was activated by other members in the program with devices that changed the electronic frequency of my brain. She would be then sent on specific missions pertaining to the particular needs of clients. Something went wrong and she began to refuse her work. When this happened, I became a target for a human trafficking ring that produces illegal content for the black market. Being forced to participate in group ceremonies and sex parties, sometimes involving torture and child porn, even bestiality. In 2016, I became a part of an international trafficking ring that ran through inside a VA hospital, a high-powered elite organization that took girls from the emergency room, drugged, placed in a freight truck, and shipping to Mexico, forced to dance and entertain the guests sexually during large parties at mansions. My involvement with this program meant that everyone I ever dated in my entire life was set up. All of my long-term relationships were with other members of the program, to my surprise. I was the only girl in a group of around 8 men that were assigned to keep me in working order. They created an illusion of friendship and love to control Mia's whereabouts. These men were brought into Illuminati organizations that convinced them through mental programming that they wanted to be bad people. That darkness was power. They showered them with money and influence to feed their egos and control their lives. They were tasked in helping me destroy my life. to ruin my credibility as insurance in case I started talking about it later in my life. They involved me in hard drugs and crime to set me up for failure in the future. I spent 2009 to 2014 in and out of jail, ending up with 19 charges and 3.5 years in county jail when it was over. What I'm doing now is creating a business called Creation Retreats. My company puts on mask making workshops integrated with energy healing sessions. Through energy work, we remove stuck emotions out of the physical body and onto canvas. Each mask will be auctioned at a fundraiser so that the girls of other human trafficking charities around the world can benefit from it. I will continue to guide others through my YouTube channel, which is Miss Morgan Ray, with tarot readings and spiritual guidance. I'm currently in the market for a publisher for my book that is ready to come out about my life in the MK Ultra program called Memorizing Mayhem. I am prepared to be a spokesman for a change. Wow, Morgan, hello.
Hi.
Hi, my darling. Sorry, it took a while, but I really wanted the listeners to hear your story before we get into it. What an impressive bio.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you've
Intense
survived.
life.
Yeah, you've survived the unsurvivable. So I'm so happy to have you on the show and have your background and have your expertise and have your experience. So tell us about it. Out of all these things, the MK Ultra program obviously sticks out the most, the human trafficking. And you and I talked a little bit about it, how they go about it, how the handlers actually get their grip on people. How did it all start for you?
Well, it started very early. As a toddler, I was taken to government facilities different times of the year and placed in experimental types of programs. So some of them would be forced to watch a screen where they were showing, and this is like 2-3 years old, forced to watch a screen full of sexual terrors and violence. They would even hold my eyes open if I wouldn't watch the show, and they put headphones on us. They would leave us in cages and have dogs attack the cages. There was a lot of sexual molestation going on. They were feeding us hard drugs. As much physical, possible, and mental and emotional torture as you could do to somebody was done to me throughout my entire childhood, not just as a toddler, but all the way until the first time that Mia was really programmed to come out and start actively working was around 8 years old. And that's when I felt the actual disassociation of the personality itself. I felt myself completely cut off from my emotional body. And growing up, I didn't understand what it was. I was just very angry. I was very upset. The anger was to an extreme level, and I didn't ever understand why, because the trauma had suppressed the memories. So Mia, to me, until I was 34 years old, like till recently, was not something I was aware of. She was a separate personality that lived completely independent of who I am. So she knew who I was, but I had no idea that she existed. So, but my family knew, and all the boyfriends and people who came into my life had known. What I've discovered recently, they used synthetic diamond technology to change the brainwaves. So anyone could do it. They would, I call them suits, right? That's what I always just referred to the CIA or the government or whatever I called. So the suits would come, and I would just say I would be going to school, or I was a gymnast, so I would go to gymnastics practice. They would come and pull me off the street, pull me into a car, take me down to whatever government facility it was that they were working with at the time. And I remember there being a line of girls, a line of kids, and I was definitely not the only one there. So it was a big group of people all the time. My family was completely set up. I was brought into a new family as about 2 years old that I was never aware of either until very recently. So they knew about me the whole time, and they used my separate personality because Mia was trained in sexual seduction in different types of performances. She had a completely different, she had no emotions whatsoever. She was almost robotic. She didn't have feelings, so she would do whatever she was told to do. And this is why they spent so much money training me and getting me to do these things. And I mean, it was a very big organized thing that happened tons of people were involved. Every single one of my family was involved. Every boyfriend I ever knew was involved. And if somebody I had met came into my life and wasn't involved, they would get paid off or intimidated to leave. So go ahead.
No, it makes sense. Everything that you're talking about makes sense to me. And no, you're so awesome and amazing for speaking out on this. It's hard, I know, but you're very, very strong. And I just want to tell our listeners, for those who don't know, Project MK Ultra is a real thing. I mean, there's a lot of people who have been in it. Not a lot, on a broad scale, but certain individuals that have been chosen for it. And I know that Morgan is a light worker. She's an alien contactee. She's a beautiful light, and no wonder that they would want that. But Project MK Ultra is also called the CIA Mind Control Program, and it is a code name given to a program of experiments on human subjects that were designed and undertaken by the Central Intelligence Agency. And you can read up on Wikipedia about it or on internet in general. And the scope of Project Ultra was broad. It was research undertaken at more than 80 institutions, including colleges and universities, hospitals, prisons, and pharmaceutical companies. The CIA operated using front organizations, also sometimes top officials at these institutions were aware of the CIA's involvement. So thank you for sharing that. And what we know is that people who are MK Ultra subjects, like you said, the Mia personality was actually created through torture, right? The split personality.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And then you get assigned a handler, right? A person who basically takes care of you staying in line. Can you tell us a little bit more about the handler? So how does that work?
Yes. There'll be many handlers, different types of handlers. My mother was absolutely, or who I thought was my mother growing up, was definitely a handler. She was actually a very influential handler, I would say. There was also, I had a best friend of 4 years when I got older. He was a handler. So they can come in different forms. They'll come in as friends, or they'll come in as lovers. Lovers is rare because that's a sticky slope that if they, like, say they fall in love with you and then they don't want, which I've had happen, where they don't want to continue with their mission, that it could end up bad for them, right? Mm-hmm. So that happens. But I did have a handler who I dated for 3.5 years. He was the ringleader of the human trafficking ring I was involved in. Mm-hmm. He was most of my handlers, though, were ex-military, and 90% of them were they had been to deployment, so they had already had their trauma over there. Mm-hmm. I did want to make a statement about the program itself. So there's different types of MK Ultra programs. There's the Monarch program, there's the Super Soldier program, and for the Monarch program is for females. It's for the sex slave programming that's directly only really related to the sexual influences. And then the Super Soldier, or the other types of programs, I think there's an intelligence one, for the Manchurian Candidate type of situation, where they do it in a political arena. They also do the Super Soldiers is it's scary. It's for men, and it's to be like assassins, and those were the men that I was dealing with. So those were the 8 men that were assigned to me, were those type of MK Ultra survivors. And I don't think still to this day that they even know that that's who they are, because like me, I wasn't aware until I raised my consciousness to a level where I could integrate my personalities. And now I have all the memories and understanding of who I really am. But for them, when they took their programming to a dark place, and I don't know if they've come out of it. There's one of them, the ringleader, and on my YouTube channel, I talked about this. I got him to even sign a confession about all the stuff he'd done. He is the only one that I'm aware of that is aware of what he has done to a degree. He's still, it's a lot to process. And when you've done that much traumatic things to other people, I'm sure that it's harder to allow yourself to believe, right? Denial is a very strong,
powerful
coping mechanism, right? So that's what people, that's what people go to. So the handlers come in different forms.
So do you think the handlers themselves are controlled, obviously?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. They are, and I've witnessed every handler that I know of is controlled electronically, the same way I was, but through a different form. So they awoke me after me through the diamond technology, but I witnessed my handler being activated through phone calls, different vibrations. They would use certain phrases to activate their separate personality, and then it would activate their mission, and then they would activate me. So they were always activated first, and then they would activate me. That's
true what you're saying. It's an amazing. We might have part of our listeners completely understand what you're talking about, and we might have a part of listeners who don't. But for those who don't, look up psychotronic weapons. That's what Morgan is talking about. They're real. They have been talked about by other people. And those psychotronic weapons that Morgan just talked about can cause a person to hear words in their head and cause mental and physical illness, or even cause them to end their life. But a lot of times in this case, it's used to control. And what Morgan's talking about is a reality that not a lot of people are privy to, but it's a reality that definitely is happening. I mean, we've heard on the news, on CNN, you've heard the stories about Epstein and Weinstein and all these things that are coming out now in Hollywood and worldwide. Me and Morgan talked about it. Morgan said, I have a feeling it's going to totally blow the top off, and a lot of power structure changes are going to happen because of all these things that are true, that have been buried, that are being talked about, and they're being, because we want to save these girls, right? We want to help these girls.
That is my absolutely number one thing. So the human trafficking that I went through was two separate situations. There was the 8 boys. It was all done by the same people, but there was the 8 boys who got together, and 4 separate times it took me unwillingly to say a warehouse, and I don't want to get into details right now, but just had group and like big parties and things like that involved in what happened to me. But what I'm focused on is the VA hospital in San Diego that took me to Mexico. Took me with 3 other girls. They took me 2 separate times. They took me from the emergency room and down to Mexico. We did what we had to do down there, and then came back, and they put us in the mental ward. And they do that so that people won't believe you when you say anything has happened. And when I talked to the ringleader about this, you know, because it had happened to me 2 separate times on a weekend, I was thinking that maybe it was just a weekend thing that they were doing this. And he came out and told me that it happens every day. And so girls are being taken every single day against their will. They're being drugged on the way down there and the way back so that they don't remember. None of the girls remember. I sat in the mental hospital with these girls for 30 days. Not one of them said a word to anybody. And I was the only one who knew what had happened. And so now that's why I'm coming out. That's the important thing for me. That's why I want to create a business to support charities, to raise money for these girls who, when they do finally, because the vibration of the planet is raising, and eventually all of these girls are going to wake up to what happened, and they are going to be really upset. I mean, the truth about the diabolical web of how big it is. There were police involved, doctors, nurses went down there with us. Like, this was very much structured, elite. They made a lot of money. There was like the numbers I heard was like $140,000 a person for each girl. Like, these, because we were trained, right? Because I was trained over years of my life to be this sexual slave who would do whatever they wanted. They could get away with doing things that they can't normally do. They can't get a girl to do the things that they could get Mia to do, right? So they paid for the training, and so they had to pay to have me down there. So the money that's going back and forth is just, it's so astronomical. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe you completely, and I know that it's also a lot of times high-class clientele that pays for it.
Yes.
You and I.
Yeah, there were huge mansions.
Yes, yes, I believe you. You and I connected on a really deep level. I had told you the reason I believe you is because something similar happened to me 10 years ago. I was basically kidnapped under a guise of a woman who was a humanitarian, all the way to Georgetown University, and put in a suite with 4 screens. And I mean, I ran out of there. I don't even know how I did it, but I ran out of there. And I remember everything. And you and I had talked about this and talked about like how they groom you, how they get you there, how their eyes change when they finally get you there. It's a black eye. You know, their eyes turn completely black, not even dark brown. And I knew that her handler, this girl that actually got me there, was a Washington official. And so that's when you and I connected. That's why my mission became to help you get this out, because I know that what you're saying is so true and it's so happening, and we really need to talk about it. But this is your story, and we're gonna be taking a break here pretty soon. Sorry to interrupt you, Morgan.
That's okay.
I do want you to go ahead. I'm sorry. We have about a minute before we go on break.
Oh, no, I'll wait because it'll take a little bit longer. So it's fine.
Okay. Yeah. So that's the reason why I actually know. And when I came to Vegas, I contacted the FBI Human Trafficking Unit, and I was like, listen, I was groomed by this woman because I'm a lesbian. So a woman would approach me. She was a humanitarian, big time, all over the world, traveled to India, worked with the girls, orphanages. And I'm like, I thought this was like a person from heaven. And she takes me all the way to Washington, and this guy, Wayne, keeps wiring her money, and he's a Washington official. And the FBI lady was like, stop. This is exactly how human trafficking works. Their front is a very innocent one. The backstory is totally different. And so I'm excited to hear more of Morgan's story when we come back. Stay tuned, because we're going to be really uncovering our reality here. And we're going to be delving deeper into everything that's happening in it. And I know that our consciousness will raise through this, and we will be able to help other girls and boys who are going through this. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
And now, your emissary to planet Earth, the host of our reality, Violeta Vrankovic.
And welcome back to our reality, everyone. With us is Miss Morgan Ray, who is a MK Ultra survivor, an amazing person, great energy, great knowledge. And we want to go ahead and continue where we left off. And we're talking about, in part, sex slavery, handlers, human trafficking, and split personalities that were induced by the MK Ultra program. So, Morgan, thanks for being with me.
Of course.
Yes, and so what we wanted to talk about is how the handlers actually get control, or how do they get you to do this stuff? You wanted to talk about it. I remember you said during the break. I don't remember exactly what the few.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Okay. When the main human trafficking ring started was 2015, when I met an individual. We ended up started dating, and he was okay for the first few months, but he became very controlling, very violent, physically, mentally, and emotionally. to an extreme level. And the way that he controlled the situation was he got me to stop talking to my friends and family. I wasn't allowed to go anywhere. I wasn't allowed to have any friends. And yet he was super violent and awful at the same time. But that's how it seems that they control, right? They have to get you into a box where I was in fear. I didn't leave him out of fear for years, and I kept going back out of some. I believe that there is, dark magic involved. I believe energy weapons are involved. I believe that it's manipulated through a lot of different ways, but mostly through fear. They use fear and intimidation my whole life. They overdosed me one of the times that they took me, and I ended up having to be Narcaned in the hospital. After, I was at a park, they came and hit me over the head with something, took me somewhere, did one of whatever it was that they did with the group sex with me, and then they did that. They injected me with heroin, and I ended up in the hospital. And then on my way home, trying to leave that situation, I got on a train, and like 5 guys came onto the train, told me that they were going to kill me, and that I was going to be disappeared if I got off on that stop. And they tortured me for, it was like a 24-hour or like 30-hour, something like that, train ride. I ended up having to escape, jump off the train on another stop. I had to leave everything that I owned. They kept stealing everything that I owned. But another thing that I wanted to take note of is that there was a portion of Mia's existence that I was unaware of till recently, that she was being prostituted by these men to high-level government officials, cartel members, making large amounts of money through my handler at the time. But I was completely broke the whole time. Not only was I broke, but they would destroy my car. They would steal my belongings. They made it so uncomfortable to live that it was a way for them to force me to go to different locations that they wanted me to be at. So 90% of the locations they wanted me was in San Diego for some reason. And I think it's just because it's close to the border and they had some connections with Mexico and the cartel. That was their main focus, was to keep me here. So if I was somewhere else, they would make my life so difficult that I had to leave, that I would go back to San Diego, because San Diego holds a very good veteran-run rehab center. So I frequented that place, and that place is where I met all 8 of the men that were involved in the actual human trafficking, which I found really odd. Each one of them was at this certain rehab center. Over about a 5-year period of time, I individually met them over 3 separate involvements with that place. So there's some sort of involvement with that actual place. And it's just something that's showed up over and over again, that anything that's ran by a VA in sponsored company, I'll say, so a VA hospital or a veteran-run something, it seems to be more controlled. It seems to be like they have more people in there that know about the program and know what's going on. And they, for some reason, are more able to, I don't know why they do that. That's a little bit of an odd thing, but it's just so controlled that it's almost obvious. It's too obvious that you would meet every single one of them in one spot without it being that, like, that must mean something.
You're right. And when you're so right. And when I read about Project MK Ultra, and it says it was first brought to public attention in 1975 by the Church Committee of the United States Congress and Gerald Ford's United States President's Commission. And then investigative efforts were hampered by CIA director and the MK Ultra files to be destroyed. But when we read about it, it seems like government does know about it, or certain branches, right? And then naturally through the military and the VA, it all trickles down, it seems like. And we're better to find new people than, they're coming for treatment. I don't know. I honestly don't know we're still researching what's going on, right? You know a lot more than me, but I know also what happened to me. This guy who was paying my supposed girlfriend, he was a Washington government official, and he would wire her like $2,000 at a time. And we were supposed to travel to New York and make a stop in Washington to meet him. And I was asking her, like, what are you doing for this man, for him to be wiring you so much money? And she said, I used to be in the port industry, and I supplied him with things he couldn't get on the open market. And that's when like all bells went off, you know?
Wow.
So
yeah.
your actually story makes so much sense to me. And yes, you know, he would be a high class. What can't you get on the open market? Like you said, bestiality. You can't get maybe you know, how do you call that? Killing someone while performing sex acts. How do you call that? I forget.
I don't know what you call that, but yes.
Yeah, but that's what they do. That's what they do.
Yes, and ceremonial. They'll do it for ceremonies, sacrifices. They'll do they did a lot of Illuminati ceremonial. I don't even know what you would call that. Just terrible.
No, you're
terrible
right. You're so right.
Terrible.
I can credit David Icke. I told you, reading his books, and I was like, now I am at Georgetown University, one of the top universities, and why am I even here, you know? And then when they walked me to the end of the hallway and I saw the suite, and the suite had screens on each corner of the suite, I was like, I'm in so much trouble. So I know exactly. And you know what's interesting? I took a taxi. I had no money on me because I left everything in the hotel room. I told my story to the taxi driver. I told him I was like so upset, and I was telling him while he was driving me to the airport, and he said, "This is no surprise to me. Happens in Washington all the time." I was like, "What?"
Oh, I bet.
What?
Any place run by a governmental system of some type will have these things happening because nobody questions what's going on behind the scenes and in the background. And that's why people like me and you need to stand up and say these things are happening, because they have an influence. They can pay people off. They paid off everyone I know. Like,
yep.
That's their first go-to is money.
Yeah.
So what I've learned about the program itself is that the Illuminati and the MK Ultra are two separate things, but they work together whenever it suits both of them. The MK Ultra programming is more of a human behavioral analysis. They want to see how far they can push boundaries. They want to see how for like weapons testing. They want to know what they can get people to do. Like, really, that's what it's about. And then for the Illuminati, it's about money, to continue their efforts of creating this one world order or whatever it is that they want, this idea of control of the entire human race, right?
Yes. No, you're right. And I know it was important to both you and me to mention to our listeners, to a broader audience, because it's word of mouth also. When you see a girl and maybe she seems drugged and she seems like maybe she's prostituting or something, might not be her choice, and she might need help. And and I have no doubt. And like you said, you know, they drugged you, and I believe you. And I told you when I was about to take my first shower that at Georgetown, my handler was banging on my door, and I was like, I have exposed skin. She's gonna drug me. Like all my senses tuned. Like the galactics were literally like, get out of there. So.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah. So I know what you're saying.
Yeah, not only did they drug me, but they would make me sick because they wanted me to go to the hospital, right? Because the hospital is their big bucks. That's where they made the large amounts of money. Sometimes once they shoved a quarter down my throat so that I couldn't go to the bathroom. So they got so stopped up that I had to go to the hospital. Like different ways of making me sick and ill. They would give me LSD-laced drugs because, yes, I did use hard drugs. I was trying to cope with some tense amount of trauma. I mean, my entire life was a very dark place for a very long time. They had to keep it that way so that I would feel so down about myself that I wouldn't want to better myself and become who I am now, right? Like the whole goal was to keep me down, like keep me thinking I was nothing, I was worthless, I didn't matter, I was just a druggie. and nobody would ever believe me because I was using drugs. But just because people use drugs does not mean that they are lying or that they are incorrect. There
That's
are
right.
people that have mental illness. That is different, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree with you. And we also talked about how hard it is to go to the police with these things. I remember in Washington when I ran out of the room finally, and I just ran with my phone and I called the cops and I'm telling them what happened to me, and they kind of didn't believe me, and then they talked to my girlfriend and she goes, well, she's crazy, she's doing this to me all the time. And I'm like, I've only known you for a month. I'm like, oh my God, nobody believes you. And then, I told you I had no money for the taxi because I left everything, and I just gave the taxi driver my little iPad, and I was like, just take me to the airport. I contacted someone to buy me a ticket. I just got to get out of here. Nobody believes you. Like, and
Exactly.
the sad part, and I know movies have been done about this, the girl or boy, even they do this to boys too. So a girl or boy runs out and is literally on the street alone and has nobody to turn to, not even the cops.
Yeah.
And then a lot of times they go back to their handler. Like she was telling me, she's like, Wayne's going to be here in a minute. He's going to get you another room if you're scared. I'm like, dude, like, I know what you're doing. Like, I can feel it. And I would rather cut off both my arms than go back with you guys. So, but it happens.
That's exactly what they did.
That's exactly what they did.
I filed 2 police reports a year apart. I even gave a signed confession from the ringleader himself. But when the cops got here, he denied it. So they've done absolutely nothing. I've also called police in 3 different states about it. I have done 2 separate human trafficking hotline reports. Like, they just won't look at it. They refuse to look at it. It's too high up. But you're right. They scare you into going back. And that's what they did to me, is they'd make sure they'd steal all my possessions. I'd have no money. And then they'd drop me somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and I'd have nowhere to go except to go back. There was no other option for me.
I believe you. And I have no doubt in my mind, had quote unquote Wayne, because I'm sure that was not his name, had Wayne made it there, like he was on his way, I would have been history. And so, but no, I'm glad we're bringing the awareness that, hey, if someone sees a person like this on the street, help them, or at least be with them, help them find shelter, because human trafficking is a real thing. And
I ran the cops screaming, telling them that I'd just been raped right then, and they did absolutely nothing about it.
Yeah, because they figure, she's, we talked about, not to demean you because you're totally awesome.
No, it's okay.
She's on drugs. She's, doing this for fun. It's nothing like it. Nothing like it. And I know that, I've tried to understand this, and I know that David Icke has written a lot about it. And, on this network, we talk about a different power being in charge of planet Earth. A reptilian, not all reptilians are bad, but a lot of reptoids. And I remember during one of my conversations with a reptilian, I was actually sitting in a restaurant, and he was showing me a bar of energy above each person. And he showed me a guy, and he says, do you see the bar of energy that I could feed off of? It's very low. I said, I see that. And then he showed me a 6-year-old girl, and the bar of energy was amazing. And he said to me, this is delicious. And I said, this is what you guys are after? The energy?
Yeah.
He says, yes.
Yeah.
So
that's exactly what they were doing to me with the ceremonies and things like that. They were stealing my energy the entire time. Yes, my handler was doing that as well. It's such a... my family was doing it as well. My family are all reptilian. I don't know what the different species are, but they look like crocodiles.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure the names. I don't really look into it because I'm over it. Honestly.
Yeah, good job.
You
sound over it.
I don't care.
Sound over it. I'm happy for you. I'm happy for you.
I've been off hard drugs for 2 years now, and it did take that for my consciousness to raise to a space where I could be able to process and understand this information. So it did take a lot, but it's That's what we need to do, is get girls into recovery so that they have the chance to heal the trauma.
Amazing. You're right. And also, you're right. Heal the trauma, bring more awareness, because God knows that could happen, I mean, to anybody, really. And, any girl or boy, girls and boys are kidnapped throughout the United States, throughout the world.
Yes.
And this is really
missing
happening.
People everywhere.
Yes. And I think if we just, like you said, raise the consciousness and brought more awareness, people could be helped. And this feeding of humans, like energetic feeding, could stop.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
No,
there's an underlying issue here that is really important for me to talk about as well. Is what they're doing is they're creating energy or creating a pattern of behavior that can potentially destroy the feminine energy on the planet, right? So they're taking women and turning them into a different energy than what they are originally. And so eventually, generations down the line, it's going to destroy families, like lines of heritage of divine feminine's energy that is supposed to be here in a natural level. Like, they are manipulating both divine masculines and feminines. I do want to say that I harbor no hard feelings towards any of the men that did this to me. These men were just as much programmed and controlled as I was. They were out of the control of their actions just as much as I was. Whether they were hurting me or I was getting hurt or whatever was happening, it doesn't matter. They still have to heal from that as well. They still have to take responsibility for what they did. Like, that's an intense life too. Like, they are going through just as much as I am. It needs to stop at the top. Like, we can't just put people in jail and say that's going to end it. We have to stop this from happening on the top levels.
Yeah, you're right. And energetically, I just think it's good that, we're hearing about these things on the news where, top people are being actually indicted for these things, so that they're answering for the wrongs that they did to so many people. And at the same time, we're becoming aware that this is a reality that we may choose to look away, but it's also good to be aware of that this is happening, and just look for
the more
ways.
And more people know, you won't even be able to look away at some point, right? Like, I'm willing to do interviews and talk to people and really put the words out and try and get something done about this hospital. Like, I'm ready to bring about some sort of change. There has to be someone pushing this forward, because otherwise no one's going to do it. And you're right, they're just going to look away. They're just going to be like, oh, that's so traumatizing, I don't want to see that. Like, because everybody wants, we like to live in this love and light idea, but we have to transmute the dark, or there will be
Amen.
You know what I mean?
Amen, sister. You're right. And you know what? This is what I wanted to mention. You and I channeled, because you're a very powerful light being. You're extraterrestrial. And I was like, okay, it took a hell of a strong person to go through your lifespan and to actually be able to collect the data, because I know our extraterrestrials send us on missions, and you're so powerful. I felt it the first time I talked to you, the first time I saw you. I was like, this is a sister of light, and she volunteered. I don't want to discredit the suffering, but on this mission to actually help. And this is where now your experience and your power is going to come to shine, because you're really truly a being of light who has undergone this to be able to bring us the most valid data of what's happening on Earth and what's happening on the higher echelons, and eventually through this multidimensional power that's still trying to hold Earth down, but we're winning. So I want to really congratulate you. I know. I want to congratulate you on this. You're a total winner. People died in this mission, and you know that.
Yes, they did.
Yes, and you survived, thank God, and you were able to. And I'm sure, and I know the hosts on this network might contact you, and other people might contact you for interviews. So it's very important. And your YouTube channel, what is the name of it again?
So my YouTube channel is Miss Morgan Ray, RAE. I also have a website, which is missmorganray.com. And I do tarot readings and spiritual guidance. I'm open to do types of motivational speaking for girls who have encountered this, or for anybody who wants to talk about the MK Ultra program. I have a lot more information. This is just an hour isn't enough time to like explain all the details and stuff, but I so appreciate and want to say thank you so much because you are absolutely a soul sister and a being of light as well, and you've just opened a door for me that will bring about things in the future to help people. And that's the only goal I have in this life now, is just to help, to give back. You're right. It was a very intense life. I'm not going to lie. Like, it was pretty miserable for a long time, but I'm honored to have taken this mission here. I'm honored to be who I am, and I am willing and ready to do whatever it is to create that change.
You're so incredible. I love you, and I'm honored to be in your presence. I really am. I really am. You're definitely going to bring that change about, and I'm so happy because it took a lot of darkness to get to the light, and it's finally going to happen for you. And that's what happens. In order for us to open our eyes, somebody has to go down deep to bring the most relevant information out. And usually the strongest of souls go through a lot in life. And so I want to thank you for completing your mission. You did it successfully, sister. I know the Galactics, every time they talk to me, they're like, man, tell her she's going to get the highest honors when she gets back. I was like, I hear you. I hear you. Because, you're welcome. Liberation Planetary, it was all about going in and changing the system from the inside out. So you did that.
Exactly right.
Yeah. And we are at the end of the show. And you're right, 1 hour wasn't enough, but you're more than welcome to be back anytime. And I also know, and I have a feeling you will be contacted by a lot more people and get that story out there and become a powerful woman you are. So I want to thank you for being with us today, Morgan. You are very welcome, sister. And dear listeners, I hope you gleaned a lot from this show and talking to an incredible person like Morgan. And next week, we will have another amazing guest. Please get in touch with Morgan. And we will talk to you next week. Enjoy your weekend, everyone. Thank you for listening.
You've been listening to Our Reality, hosted by Violeta Brankovic. Live every Saturday from the heart of Las Vegas, Nevada, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on the host as well as the show, as well as upcoming guests, please check out our reality show page at kcorradio.com.
Our reality.
From the ordinary to the extraordinary, we've got you covered. Our Reality, changing the world, one topic at a time. This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51.
Wait, that doesn't exist.
This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.